going on, everybody? It's Afro Think Tank. Today's video is going to be about watching our light-skinned brothers and sisters. The ones that just so happen, unfortunately, they're a part of the white folk society, right? But they're trying to disassociate themselves from white folks. They're becoming a part of the melanated human society. All right, they know that they're not actually white. All right, they got multiple colors and everything. You know what I'm saying? So they're definitely not white. All right, they don't subscribe. They're not really subscribing to it. They may got to say that shit on their job application, but in their hearts and minds, they really far removed Africans. Okay, they know that, right? We go back far enough. They come from Africa. They hold on to that genetic strand inside their body that's hiding somewhere in the back. All right, and we're gonna listen to them talk about what they see, how they're seeing everything, because, you know, before you would have to learn about Jim Crow, you know, in a book, or, you know, maybe you talk to an elder that was there to remember it. Usually it was the black ones, because the white ones don't want to talk about it. The white ones don't want to talk about Jim Crow. The ones that participated and benefited from the institution of Jim Crow, they don't want to talk about it. You know, all those ones that used to go to those picnics, all those ones that used to go to those protests and shit. You know how you look at those pictures and you be looking at the girl going to school while everybody harassing her, and you realize that, hey, that girl's still alive. So is that white person behind them talking all that shit, huh? Where they at, huh? Walking around. They're all Trump MAGA right now. Remember, keep out all those pictures, all of our elders, all right, and our ancestors who went through the struggle of Jim Crow, and all those people that were participating and the purposeful, commercialized disenfranchisement of black people. Yeah, they're still alive too, walking around. All right, keep that shit in mind. And these are the ones who support Donald Trump, the racist, neo-Nazi, fascist government. These ones, they're still alive. They're still around. The ones that told you to get in the back of the bus, yeah, they still alive. They're still around. Those ones, the ones that said get up out of my stool, yeah, they still alive. The ones that said get up out of this restaurant, don't drink in that water fountain, they're still alive. They're still around to see all of this. And see, y'all white supremacists think y'all getting some sort of, y'all not really gonna gain anything from this. All right, I know you guys think y'all up right now, White Boy Summer and shit. Y'all think y'all up because y'all got y'all little mascot. I just want you to know this short-term gain is going to be your long-term absolute loss. That's why I'm smiling. That's why I'm not worried. That's why most black people, we can see it. We see it. Because you're forcing your counterparts, the ones that we would consider allies, right? The ones that we wish would fight a little harder. You know, the ones we wish that they would spill some blood, like some of their former ancestors who went out there on them boycotts with the black folks and spilled blood, right, with black people, on behalf of black people. Those ones who show us they have empathy and humanity and they actually care, they're part of the human family. Those ones, some of them still alive and they still around, their kids still alive, and they taught their kids, and a lot of their kids are right now protesting against you. See, right now this is a battle of white, of what it means to be a European. The Civil War has started. The Civil War has started. It's already brought death, political turmoil, right? It's going to cause people to move and shift from areas, refugees. It's got all the recipes of a war. It's a slow burning war. It's a smothering fire happening here, right? That's what's happening. This is Civil War 2.0. We are in an American Civil War. And it's white folks battling other white folks for the hearts and minds of their own white folks and how they want to perceive them, be looked at in the future. And they're also fighting for their descendants. White people right now are fighting for their descendants because their descendants are going to have to pay this check, all right, that all you white folks are out here cashing. All these loans you guys are pulling out, all these social loans and shit, you think you got a good APR? Watch when that shit mature, huh? Watch when that shit mature, but you don't care because you won't be around. You don't care about your great-grandchildren, right? They right around the corner, right? And you guys are screwing them over, at least half of y'all, right? See, I got to get y'all shit together. And I'm watching. I'm paying attention because, like I said, us black folks, we was prepared for this. We been prepared for this. We used to this shit. We about 400 years up into this shit, and we can see the light at the end of the tunnel. That's why we chilling, right? While y'all kind of like flipping, right? But in the meantime, between time, we're going to watch, you know, the ones that want to be considered allies, the ones that want to be on our good graces at the end of all of this. We got to see y'all fight, and I'm watching y'all fight. So get to it, all right? Anyway, you guys tell me what you think in the comment section. It's Afro Think Tank. Learn something, teach something. I'm out.
White people need to understand how gutting the Voting Rights Act impacts you, not just black people. Back in 1965, the Voting Rights Act was created to stop racial discrimination in voting.
This is where folks get lost.
The fuck am I? They don't take your ballot away, they just redraw the maps. Every 10 years, the states redraw their congressional districts. They decide which neighborhoods go into which districts, and that decides who your representative is. So, if black people make up 40% of a state, then they should have 40% of the influence. First one is called packing, and the other one is called cracking. You can look that shit up on your own time, because I'm here to talk to the Caucasians. And yes, that includes Indians, Mexicans, and Asians, because I know a lot of y'all voted for DT too, and because you have a little bit of an easier time indoctrinating yourself into whiteness. Don't believe me? Have you ever been called an Oreo? So this is why I say it matters to white people, because this administration is trying to treat everybody like black people. Remember Alex Preddy and Renee Good, the two white people that got killed in Minnesota and the whole country went ballistic? You really think that was the only people that got killed by ICE? No. Here's a list of minorities that also got killed that you probably never heard about. Now what you've seen from Renee Good and Alex Preddy is the type of treatment that black folks have been going through forever. Now white folks, I want you to listen very, very clearly. Your racism doesn't necessarily come from using the N-word. It comes from your silence. It comes from your lack of acknowledgement of honoring and respecting the history of what this place has gone through and how it has treated certain groups of people. And that lack of acknowledgement is the America propaganda system speaking through you. How many of you thought racism ended in 1865 when slavery was over? There are even black people who believe that. They grow up in segregated societies, learning about people who don't look like us strictly through media influences. And you know what? We're pretty much brainwashed to believe that anyone who has darker pigmentation, their life just isn't as valued. Now, this administration knows they're probably not going to win, because they're not very popular, and they're going to do everything in their power to maintain in power, which is why when midterms come around, they're going to try to make sure our vote don't really matter. And I believe white folks are starting to wake up and can make a huge impact in this next election. So if you don't want to vote on behalf of protecting black people, then vote on behalf of protecting yourself. Because if you don't, we're all going to live in an economic totalitarian surveillance state, which is a lot like the ghetto.
The Supreme Court just gutted what was left of the Voting Rights Act, and within hours, the Lieutenant Governor of Alabama, Will Ainsworth, shared this on social media. A map of Alabama with 7 solid Republican, majority white congressional districts, and 0 of any other kind. Because of course he did. To understand how bad this is, you have to know a little about the history of my home state. And I mean 70 million years worth back to the Cretaceous period. The southern coastline of America used to be significantly north of where it is today, and the sea life that died there created a beltline of chalk deposits across the state. That chalk trapped nutrients above it and made the soil rich for growing cotton. This is where plantations sprung up. This is where slavery hit high gear. We call it the Black Belt for the color of the dirt, but it works for race too. Today, these are the majority black or near majority black counties, and nearly all that go to that other party. Alabama has never been kind to this region. And now, overlay one map on the other, well, would you look at that? This map Ainsworth shared divides the Black Belt among 5 majority white congressional districts. His map takes black representation in Congress from 2 districts to 0. This isn't the first time something like this has happened. When the Supreme Court cleared the way for voter ID in Alabama, the state tried to close driver's license offices in majority black counties. And just 3 years ago, this same Supreme Court ordered Alabama to draw a second district where black people might stand a chance of being on the winning side, because even they could see the Alabama legislature was being racist. That case is still alive today and probably ensures Alabama's current map stays locked in place until 2030. But then you can thank Will Ainsworth for showing us what happens when that protection's gone.
So there's something really interesting to me about what I've been seeing since yesterday with the Supreme Court ruling on the Voting Rights Act. Mostly has been white left-leaning people arguing about whether or not this means we should elect a white guy who got a Nazi tattoo to the Senate. And I feel like that's really emblematic of a serious problem and how we got here, which is, as I have talked about before, punishment as a whiteness value is something that leads us to constantly center the villains and not the victims. I'm not seeing a lot of people, and granted it's still early, a lot of people are kind of resting and recouping and then gonna get up and go into the fight. So don't take this as a blanket statement of what everyone is doing, but I'm not seeing a lot of people focus on things like ways to push back on your local electeds, ways to help get the vote out, ways to mitigate the destruction that this is going to cause. It's mostly just like, oh, hi. It's mostly just people arguing about whether or not that means we should compromise on the people we elect to the Senate so we can pack the Supreme Court hypothetically in the future. And it's something that I really want to push back on, because we've talked about this, the way that Minnesota works. Minnesota has been centering kind of the endangered. Hello. And what? Like Minnesota and places like that work because they focus on protecting the vulnerable and community care, and I just wonder what it would look like as a whole on the left if we were more focused on taking care of the people impacted by these votes than coming up with than arguing about is this person going to help save us? Does that make sense? I think it's a very it's part of the individualisticness of American culture. It's part of the kind of the superhero mythos that we have in terms of, we gotta take out the bad guys, right? And that's how we win, is we take out the bad guys. And I'm not saying that we don't take out the bad guys, but what would happen if we focused on vulnerable and affected communities first? What would happen if we focused on taking care of the disenfranchised first? What would that look like? So I'm just gonna throw that out there.
I seriously don't want to hear Republicans talk about they care about every single American ever again. So if you aren't aware today, the Supreme Court gutted Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act. And this is the section responsible for ending Jim Crow and has been upheld for the past 40 years until today. The Republican-run Supreme Court has decided to take a machete to that because they heard an argument that it is racist towards white voters. Yes, that is actually what they decided on, and that was their reason for gutting Section 2. But let's keep in mind, the Republican and MAGA party has said, oh, they weren't going to go after the Voting Rights Act. Oh, you are not going to lose any rights under this administration. Says the same party that is literally targeting minorities, blacks, Latinos, and every other minority under the fucking sun that live within the Deep South. Yeah, that would literally make all the sense in the world if you were dropped on your head repeatedly as a child. Today's decision obviously just reaffirms the belief that we constantly have said about the right-wing Republican and alt-right party, which is all of MAGA, in my personal opinion. They are completely and utterly racist, point blank, period. But this is why state and local elections matter. Republicans, as it stands right now, you are still going to get your asses handed to you in the elections coming in November. So just be wary of that. But to those that live in the states that are being affected by this shitty decision from the Supreme Court today, make a fucking stink. And if you disagree with this, make a fucking stink. And also to the last little bit of my message, this goes for Black MAGA and Latino MAGA Americans. If you seriously thought that this administration cared about you, no, they didn't. You guys were just pawns in their fucking game, and you were just useful idiots. So if you want to atone for your sins, you want to start singing a different tune when November comes around and in 2028.
Listen, y'all, Trump and MAGA have picked a fight with the wrong people. For those of you who aren't as familiar with Black history, countless individuals were jailed and beaten, and some even died to pass the Civil Rights Acts of the 1960s, including the Voting Rights Act. White folks can't really imagine that because we've always had the right to vote. We've always had folks who look like us in Congress. But we cannot stand idly by as our black brothers and sisters are politically erased. You know, the white community and the white Christian community in particular in this nation has a shameful track record of fighting against black progress. We made a whole documentary about it. And regardless of where you stand on reparations as a whole, which I do support, what we can all do is to take the first step towards repair, and that is to stand with our black brothers and sisters when they're under attack. Because if we truly are one nation under God, as we claim to be, then it's high time we started acting like it.
Hey, so in case you haven't heard about all the Voting Rights Act stuff, I'm not qualified to tell you about it. What I want to talk about is the importance of why I'm doing what I'm doing when I talk about racism as a white person from the white perspective, being anti-racist, being pro-black as a white person, and getting other white people to come with me on this journey. The dismantling of the Voting Rights Act is because people never stopped being racist. White people never stopped being racist. We just stopped admitting it. I saw someone caption a video with Jim Crow is back, and I would respectfully disagree. Jim Crow's not back, it never left. Jim Crow is being legalized again. Jim Crow laws are being put into practice again. But Jim Crow in the hearts and minds of white people who didn't want to let go of their power or their deluded beliefs about their own superiority, that Jim Crow never left. When we as white people don't stop to dismantle the racism and the bias inside of us, we are giving racism time and space to gestate and mature and mutate into the next form of overt racism, like KKK, like neo-Nazism. We need to make a concerted effort to dismantle what was put into place by conscious effort. You can't just wait for it to blow over because it didn't show up by accident.
If you're white and you think the Supreme Court gutting the Voting Rights Act doesn't affect you, think again. Because that instinct that this is someone else's problem, that it won't affect me, just them, is how we ended up here. Exactly. What actually happened was the Supreme Court didn't just weaken the Voting Rights Act for voters of color. They dismantled the enforcement mechanism that makes your vote, your white vote, mean something too. Because the truth about voter suppression is that nobody says this part out loud. It's that it's never about race. It's always been about power, the big guy versus the little guy. Make no mistake, this decision means fewer voting places. Guess what? That's your rural white county too. Stricter ID laws, that's your elderly mother who doesn't drive and doesn't have a passport. Purged voter rolls, that's your kid who moved home from college. Early voting cuts, that's you working 2 jobs trying to get to the polls on a Tuesday before they close. The architecture of suppression doesn't check your skin color at the door. It checks your income, your zip code, whether you have the flexibility in your schedule, whether you can afford to wait in a 4-hour line. They gut the Voting Rights Act, and what they really gut is the guardrail, the legal infrastructure that allows anyone to challenge a law designed to make voting harder. Without it, state legislatures move faster. They can redistrict with less scrutiny, with the primary goal being to steal our elections and take away our democracy. They can close polling locations in working class neighborhoods, all working class neighborhoods. This is not abstract. This is your school board, your water quality, your hospitals staying open, your sheriff, your state legislature drawing the maps that decide whether your vote is competitive ever again. The Voting Rights Act was not now or ever was a black gift. It was an American promise, written in blood, in Selma on a bridge, by people who understood that democracy is not self-executing. Someone has to guard it. And if you've been sitting on the sidelines thinking this fight wasn't yours because you're white, you are wrong. They're coming for you too. Stay steady, eyes open, guard the Republic.
So I have something to say from my heart to the black community in America. And I don't know if it's going to make one bit of difference to anyone or not. It probably won't, but I need to say it anyway. I am sorry. I am terribly, terribly sorry. As a white man, I have never given a second thought to my right to vote or to my right to representation in this country. It has just always been there. So at first I thought, what's the big deal about the right to vote? But after 13 years of studying Black history, our history, I get it. And I'm sorry, because we in the white community have made light of your progress and we have made light of your pain. And as we callously smash decades and centuries of that progress to pieces in a moment and just sort of shrug as we walk away, I'm sorry. I don't know what else to say, but I am sorry that this is the reality that we are living in, and I'm asking that you forgive me. I'm asking that you forgive me.
This morning I posted about my disgust regarding the Supreme Court decision from yesterday gutting the Voting Rights Act. And Brenda here has decided to say, funny Black people don't feel that way. So I'm just curious. Leslie Jones, what you got to say about this? Eddie Murphy? Chris Rock? I don't know, who else? Dave Chappelle? Anybody got anything to say?
White leftists are exactly the same as their white counterparts on the right side of the spectrum in that they are single-issue voters. White leftists are 100% single-issue voters. It's just that instead of the single issue being something like abortion, which you find on the right side of the aisle, white leftists have made their single issue this incredibly narrow stance on Gaza and Palestine in general. Something that is quite literally impossible to obtain in today's political climate in the United States. Kind of like how ending any and every type of abortion in the United States is an impossible task on the right side of the aisle. The anti-abortion base holds up these pictures of dead fetuses and claim that a genocide is happening every single day in the United States as a result. Meanwhile, white leftists hold up pictures of dead Palestinians and use literal children as their poster children for their own reductive anti-progressive agenda. White leftists have colonized the Palestinian movement and turned Gaza, the West Bank, all of Palestine into a thought-terminating cliche, all for a feeling of moral superiority. White leftists have removed any and all nuance from this issue, much like how our siblings on the right side of the aisle have removed any sort of nuance when it comes to the issue of abortion. And what we're seeing play out in real time in certain political races across the United States are white leftists running interference for the right-wing authoritarian regime, using the single issue of Palestine as cover for their unprocessed, unpacked, deeply held racist beliefs. Because if you look at one of these political races, much like the Democratic Senate primary race that's happening right now in Texas, there is a lot of hate and racism and critique of a black woman running to unseat John Cornyn, an old white man. And white leftists are saying she's not good enough. Whereas if you actually sit down and do a modicum of research into Jasmine Crockett and her voting record, and what she stands for, you will see that she is objectively more progressive. But because white leftists have not taken the time to properly unpack their deeply held racist beliefs, they still hold a lot of tenets of white supremacy culture that include things like purity testing, moral superiority, white saviorism, you name it.
These fascist white Republicans sat up there in the state house laughing in black people's faces while they carved up Memphis. They were laughing in black people's faces while they carved up Memphis, the only majority black congressional district in the state. And they did that while black representatives and protesters filled the Capitol yelling, "No Jim Crow." And these white conservatives were cracking up. And that just goes to show you how evil and distasteful they are. And then one white conservative even walked in with a Trump flag as a cape. That just goes to show you that they treat the pain and power of Black working people like a joke. Republicans and their right-wing base will always keep proving time and time again that they're the enemies of Black Americans. They mock us, they strip our power, and they want to protect Epstein collaborators over our lives. They're just playing the same strategy as always after Reconstruction. They want to dilute the Black vote. They want to keep the rich in control, and they want to continue to blame Black people and working class communities for always fighting back against their fascism.
Oh, look, she said the quiet part out loud.
I just wanted to point out that we had a Black man as our president for 8 years, and not one of us racist, redneck, far-right conservatives tried to kill the guy. I'm just saying.
You just treated being Black as the problem. Because you didn't say we had a president we disagreed with for 8 years. You said we had a Black man as a president for 8 years. As if that alone would be the reason somebody would want to harm him, but didn't because they're not violent. That's a wild thing to accidentally admit, because what you just did was admit that his race was the issue for you guys. You see, nobody's trying to harm Donald Trump because he's white. That's not a thing. The people who've targeted him aren't motivated by his race. They're reacting to him, his rhetoric, his actions, his messaging. So when you bring up Obama being Black, you're implying that race is a reason to target somebody. And that says a lot more than you probably meant it to. Because if we're going to compare the two, well then, let's compare them honestly. One president faced hate rooted in who he was. The other faces hate rooted in what he does. And those are not the same conversation.
If you are privileged enough to not be paying attention to what's going on right now, and it's so easy, I know it's so easy to just have no clue. I say this with love, but I need you to wake the fuck up and start paying attention. I mean, really, the time for that, and a lot of you have, and bear with me, the time for that was a long ass time ago. But guys, it's getting worse. It's not getting better. And I've been awake since 4 a.m. I just flew across the country. I am exhausted. And this is not polished, and I'm emotional, and I'm angry, and do you know what's happening? Do you know what's happening? So, numerous southern states just gerrymandered. They just redefined the district. So basically, Republicans just illegally redefined voting districts intentionally to keep minorities from being able to vote. And in Virginia, Democrats and minority voters actually went about handling this issue the correct way, and then the Virginia Supreme Court struck it down. Why? I'll tell you why. Because we have a racist nation. It's been racist since its inception. There's never been a time that it hasn't been racist. And we've just had enough people gain power recently that they can finally, that want to take it even back to where it was, even though it's never been great, that it's happening. It's actually happening. And this has been the plan all along for a long time. This is what that type of person has always wanted. And I'm angry and I'm tired. And if I'm this angry and I'm this tired as a white woman living in New England, I can only fucking imagine how people of color, how people, Democrats in the South, like, just are feeling. I can only imagine. And there's just so much I could say on this. Like, I've lived all over the United States. I'm born and raised in Oklahoma. I've lived in Texas. I've lived in Colorado. I've lived in Pennsylvania. I currently live in Connecticut. Before any blue states, like, want to feel superior, like, listen. There's some stuff that's done well. I don't want to take credit away from, things that have been done well. But y'all, racism is everywhere. Okay. I own a business in Connecticut that employs a diverse, I employ people of so many ethnicities. And today, one of my employees had to deal with a racist customer. Today. In Connecticut. In a blue area. It's everywhere. It's everywhere. And Black people are the ones primarily fighting this. Why? Why? This shouldn't be on them. We let this get this bad. We're the ones that had our heads so far up our asses that even for the ones like me who finally got there, it took a long time of living in just ignorance and not understanding and not seeking to truly understand. My heart was never in a bad place, but I didn't take the initiative to fully understand until I was late 20s. So that's wasted time. That was all wasted time. And then others of you, and I say this with love, you had people trying to shove it down your throats and you still refused to see it because you didn't want to see it. And some of you are still doing that. I'm literally breaking out in a rash right now. Because of my spiritual beliefs, I refuse to give up hope that this can get better. Because I believe that everyone who's here right now chose to be here for a reason. And I can't give up hope, even if we don't see it in this lifetime or 5 lifetimes from now. But it's heavy, and I'm angry. And the amount of trauma that has been inflicted on Black and brown bodies just in the last few years, in the last year, in the last 6 months, and that is continuing to go on and continuing to escalate. I don't know how you guys are doing it. I don't know how you're doing it. And I don't have words. But if you are a white American watching this and you have not already woken up as much as you possibly can to the fact that our nation is about like the systems in place, the foundations of our country, it's like not so beneath the surface, and it always has been. And I know because I grew up in the South and I've lived all over. And when I finally saw it for what it was mortifying. And it's not about shame, it's about responsibility. I don't know how I fix this. I don't know. But we have to fucking figure it out. We have to figure it out. We're not angry enough. We are not angry enough. We're not angry enough. It's not okay. We have to do something. We've been sitting back and relying on the system to somehow protect us and protect others. Guys, the system is what is allowing this to happen. There have been issues in the system the entire time. The system was ultimately designed to keep these types of people in power and to subjugate other types of people. Why are we relying on the system? All right, what do? We need ideas. We need to do something. We need to do something. We need to, I don't have the information. I don't have the knowledge, but I'm going to have to find out, like, why are blue states paying federal taxes right now? Did you guys know, again, I grew up in a red state. I grew up in a very, very poor red state. Did you know that the taxes that blue states pay keep red states financially afloat? So blue states, why are we paying our taxes? Why are we paying our federal taxes? What are our options here? I need someone smarter and more intelligent. That's the same thing. More knowledgeable than me to start, like, we need ideas. Someone point me in the right direction. I'm going to look anyway. What are we doing? Are we just going to let this happen? Are we just going to sit back and let this happen? And let the people who are being oppressed be the pretty much only ones actually taking action and trying to do anything about this? I can't live with that. Can you live with that? What are we going to do? Let's talk about it.
Obviously, the Black community does not need me to speak for them. But I will say on behalf of the white community that finds, segregation nauseating, that found Jim Crow horrible, that feels embarrassed that is such a huge part of our history from slavery on, I think if we don't do something now, America's going to look a lot like it did during segregation. The Republicans that control the government in Louisiana, nearly every other southern state, they're going to use this decision the Supreme Court just made as aggressively as possible to reshape the political landscape, to wipe out as much Black representation as they possibly can. And everyone, it doesn't matter what color your skin, if you feel sickened by the history of our country and what we have done to people, then this is the time to say we're not doing this anymore, because this is a nightmare, but we absolutely cannot stop fighting.
So the Republican justices of the Supreme Court, in a vote of 6-3, have now made it legal for states to racially discriminate in their gerrymandering. Isn't that lovely? Basically disenfranchising people of color voters all over the place because they're just going to be drawn off the map and they're not going to get representation in Congress like they should. And they're already underrepresented. So, this is why we say that you're racist. That is institutionalized racism. Okay? So that, racism, not just calling a Black person an N-word. Okay? No. If you support what the Supreme Court just did, you're a racist. You are. And I'm sorry, if you support restricting anyone's right to vote or taking anyone's vote away, you're an American. Everybody that walks on this land should vote. Everybody.
But on the issue of race, on the treatment of African Americans specifically, even being terrible at what they're doing has still proven to be disastrous for our country. And it is, in part, the posturing from the White House and the president. That is stuff that validates and excites the worst bigots in the country, and that is consequential. But it's more than that, too. We are now about 16 months into what has been, from day one, a concerted and intense targeting of Black Americans, specifically by this president and by this administration. On his first full day in office, he proclaims war on diversity efforts, not only in government, but in any institution in the country over which he can exert leverage, everything from schools and universities to law firms to private businesses of every stripe. He then immediately started firing some of the highest profile Black public officials in the whole U.S. government, seemingly regardless of any other thing about them. I mean, right away, we get the firing of the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Charles C.Q. Brown. We get the firing of the Librarian of Congress, Carla Hayden. And then it's Gwynne Wilcox from the National Labor Relations Board. And then it's Robert Primus, the chair of the Surface Transportation Board. And then it's Alvin Brown from the NTSB. And then it's Peggy Carr, the head of the National Center for Education Statistics. And then it's Willie Phillips from FERC, from the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. And then it's Lisa Cook from the Federal Reserve Board of Governors, and on and on and on. when Trump and his top political donor, Elon Musk, then started just lopping off huge swaths of the federal government to disastrous practical effect, the largest and most egregious cuts targeted federal agencies that employed a disproportionate number of black employees. Reporter Erica Green wrote about this a few months ago for The Times, noting that nothing had moved backwards in the federal government for black Americans this quickly or this far in over 100 years, since Woodrow Wilson came in 1912 and resegregated the federal workforce. Quote, black employees were fired or demoted to lower-level jobs, relegated to separate and inferior lunchrooms and other facilities, and accused of making white women feel unsafe. Those who remained were humiliated. A black worker in the Postal Service was surrounded by screens, so white workers would not have to look at him. Another employee had a cage built around him to separate him from his white counterparts. A clerk in the Treasury Secretary's office was assigned to rewrite all correspondence to address black employees by their first names. The way Trump addressed the Librarian of Congress, Carla Hayden, by her first name when he crowed publicly about firing her for no reason. In the year of our Lord, 2025, and now 2026, this president and this administration is not just inheriting that history from the Wilson administration, it's furthering it in its own ways. Since 1965, there has been an executive order in effect. It was signed by Lyndon Johnson, 1965. Since 1965, all federal contractors have been banned by executive order from discriminating on the basis of race, color, religion, sex, sexual orientation, gender identity, or national origin. Donald Trump rescinded that 1965 rule on his first full day in office. Less than a month later, Trump announced another rule change. They rescinded Clause 52.222-21 of the Federal Acquisition Regulation, which doesn't sound like much, but I'll tell you what the title of that is. It's Prohibition of Segregated Facilities. That's what Trump rescinded less than 1 month into being back in the White House. That section reads, quote, the contractor agrees that it does not and will not maintain or provide for its employees any segregated facilities at any of its establishments, and that it does not and will not permit its employees to perform their services at any location under its control where segregated facilities are maintained. That anti-segregation clause has been in government contracts for decades. Donald Trump overtly reached out to rescind it, which means, bluntly, that the federal government no longer explicitly prohibits contractors from having segregated restaurants, waiting rooms, and drinking fountains. Make America great again, right? Recently fired and sidelined employees in the Department of Housing and Urban Development have started sounding the alarm that the Trump administration is no longer, just bluntly no longer enforcing a federal law known as the Fair Housing Act. Fair Housing Act, another pillar of the civil rights movements and its achievements. The Fair Housing Act dates to 1968. It says you can't refuse to rent to someone or refuse to sell a house to someone on account of their race or their color or religion or national origin or any other factor against which we're supposed to be protected from discrimination. According to current and former employees of the Department of Housing and Urban Development under Donald Trump, they have dropped enforcement of the Federal Housing Act. In Trump's first year back in office, black unemployment spiked in this country from 6.2% all the way up to 7.5%, making it the highest of all racial groups. Under Joe Biden, black unemployment had been at a record low of 4.8%, spiking now under Donald Trump. The Trump administration, generally speaking, is bad at its work. It is bad at what it sets its mind to in all sorts of ways. But black Americans, African Americans, have been targeted by this administration in a concerted way that has nevertheless been devastating, even though the Trump administration isn't good at anything they set their mind to. And that was all before the conservative majority on the U.S. Supreme Court, including all of Trump's appointees, voted to effectively end the Voting Rights Act a few days ago. As soon as the court said they would take up that case, people started mapping the worst case scenario for what Trump and the Republicans would do, particularly in the South, if the court gutted the Voting Rights Act of 1965, the crowning achievement of the civil rights movement. And the before and after looks like the snapback after the end of Reconstruction, after the Civil War. I mean, look at the state of Louisiana there. A third of the population of Louisiana is black. Louisiana's Republican governor canceled congressional elections that are already underway in that state to rush through new maps that will presumably make sure that even though 1/3 of the population of that state is black, there will be no black representation in Congress for Louisiana at all. South Carolina, 1/4 of the population is black. They have one majority-minority district represented by an African-American Democrat, Jim Clyburn. They are going to try to get rid of that one black district so that South Carolina is all white, all Republican in representation, while 1/4 of the people who live in that state are black. In Tennessee, 1 in 6 residents is black. Republicans now want to make sure all 9 congressional seats in Tennessee are white. All 9 of them. They want it to be 9 to nothing, white and Republican, when 1 in 6 people in that state is black. In her dissent from the majority ruling, Justice Elena Kagan said it will likely cause the largest reduction to minority representation since the end of Reconstruction. She probably didn't need to use the word likely there. The war on black Americans that is being waged by this president and this Republican Party is one of the only things they have put their mind to in this past year that they've actually done pretty well at. A comprehensive attack on black public officials and black public power. A comprehensive attack on black public officials in the federal government, black employees in the federal government, black representatives in Congress, and now all around the country, where everywhere Republicans are in charge, they are scrambling to make sure that black public officials can no longer hold office. We're going to talk tonight about the pushback against that and the strategies to make them pay for it, both in Louisiana, which is ground zero here, and around the country. We're going to talk tonight about some surprising pushback from churches and the clergy. We're going to talk tonight about a blistering takedown of Trump and the administration in federal court in Washington in a most unexpected case. But big picture here, we are in the middle of something really radical in this country. Not just to get rid of our constitutional republic, to replace our form of government with something else, but to get rid of the multiracial democracy that our Constitution is supposed to protect. It is a war on black America. The fight to save it is looking like it's going to be the fight of all of our lives. More ahead tonight. Stay with us.
Hey everyone, so we knew it was going to happen and it happened. The United States Supreme Court essentially gutted the Voting Rights Act. What does this mean? It means that now in all these different states, a lot of them in the South, these conservative legislatures are going to try to redraw the lines, redraw the maps around who can vote and who is going to be represented. What now is going to happen is it's going to be more difficult to challenge those laws that get passed that we know are intended to make it more difficult for you to have the representatives that you want at a local level, state level, and congressional level. And here's the bottom line. They may put all kinds of obstacles in. Let's not fall for it, because they know that the power is with the people. And they know that when people vote in their numbers, that's when change comes. This means checking your voter registration status. This means knowing where your polling place is. They will try to make it more difficult, but we cannot be deterred. People ask me, Kamala, why are you optimistic? I'm optimistic because I know the power is with the people. And I know that we're not going to let anybody take our power from us. So let's get out there and let's fight.
Who taught you to hate the texture of your hair? Who taught you to hate the shape of your nose? Who taught you to hate the color of your skin to such an extent that you bleach? Who taught you to hate yourself from the top of your head to the soles of your feet. Before you come asking Mr. Muhammad, does he teach hate, you should ask yourself who taught you to hate being what God gave you.
Free Sudan! Boycott diamonds and gold! Free Sudan! Boycott diamonds and gold! We most definitely cannot forget about the people of Sudan!
Thanks for watching Afro Think Tank. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And follow me on Substack and Patreon for more content. Remember, it's Pan-Africanism or nothing.